good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. Appreciate you all coming out on August rainy day, which is probably a great day to come out. August rainy day as opposed to
nothing else to do.
August sunny day, yeah. Nothing else to do. Lord, to whom shall we go? So let's begin with a word of prayer. Father in heaven, thank you for the opportunity to be together. Thank you for the freedom to assemble. Thank you for your goodness, your grace, your mercy. Thank you for the Lord Jesus who bore our sins in his body on the tree, that we being dead to sin might live to righteousness. God, thank you. Thank you for every business, home, family represented here today. Thank you for Art, our speaker today. And we ask, God, that there would be something from heaven imparted into our lives, that your kingdom would be further, that Jesus would be elevated in our hearts and minds. We commit this next hour or two to you in the precious name of Jesus. Amen. Well, there's no sound today, so if you think you might have trouble hearing, you may want to move over. But other than that, you can stay where you're at. No real announcements other than, obviously, the third Saturday of the month is our King's Group meeting. And the first Saturday of the month is our small group or our council meeting, which we meet here in the missions boardroom. So I think we have one new person. That would be you. You have to give a speech, Ashley. So can you tell us about yourself while you're here?
Sure. Hello. I'm Ashley. I'm a writer and a marketer. Online courses for people. And design networking group and
wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it. So with that, I'm going to ask Art to come on up and share with us. He's recently, just like a few days ago, I think, come back from India and Thailand. And Art's God is doing some really cool things through Art's life and his business. So let's welcome him on up. So.
Can I bug you guys all to move to the middle so I don't have to look at a pole for you guys? No, can you move? No, I appreciate it. I'll be doing this the whole time. I'll wait for them to move. So Terry gave me free reign to talk as long as I want.
Yep, there you go.
I know probably about half this group, so I'll give a little backstory on myself. My wife and I have been in Mount Hope for, since 2001 when I graduated college. Like most guys, I came to the church because I fell in love with a girl, so I've been here ever since. My wife and I volunteer in Spanish, so I always joke, like, guys, if you want to learn how to break out of the friend zone, I got the talk for you, So my wife and I were friends for 5 years, and then we got married within 9 months once we started dating, so. All right, backstory on me, though. My wife and I were a financial wreck many years ago. Came through Club 52 when Pastor Dave had it here, and I met a lot of the mentors in this room and things like that. Through that, after taking the class year after year after year, we finally got surrounded by some awesome mentors that helped us figure out if we started a business, what would it be? And that's a story for another day, but 2012, we actually started our own business called Collaborative. So we've been in business now for, 12 years now, I think the math is. I do got to thank Terry personally. I've had a lot of great mentors in my life. And I remember when I approached Terry, I said, Terry, I'd like you to mentor. And I don't even remember what we agreed to be mentored on, but what I love about people that listen to God is they hear God and what they need to mentor on. And he hit a side of my life that I didn't even plan on being mentored on, and that was my marriage with my wife. And so I do thank you so much, because that was needed, because we were about to enter into incredible busyness. Like if you start a business, you're building a second family. If you haven't done that yet, you're going to realize it. You've got your home family and you got your business family. And sadly, the business family gets more of your time. They get 40 hours dedicated time a week. And so his message and his investment in my life was critical, because we were just about to enter into that journey. So thank you so much. I mean, my wife and I have been married now for 22 years. So it's been incredible. But I'll tell you guys a little bit about what I just came back from. 2 years ago, I got involved with a group. God put it on my heart to start a nonprofit, which James is now on the board of. And I got to hear some of my missionary friends that came back off the field, and just the hurt that was going on in their life about how painful it is to be a missionary, some of the lack of support they felt like they were getting from their own organizations, and just the hurt. And I said, "Aren't you guys businesses though? You're going over there?" And they said, "Yeah, technically." And I was like, "Explain that to me. What do you mean technically?" And what I got to hear was basically fake facades to get in the country so that they could be a witness. And that didn't sit right with me as a business owner. So I'm like, if you're doing a business, it should be legit. It should be changing lives. It should be making a profit. And you're basically a storefront. So I asked a lot of questions. Some of them were hurtful, but I asked them, I said, "So you have a fake business, but you're trying to teach them a real Jesus?" I'm like, how does that go over? And it didn't go over well from what I could hear over and over again. And so that led us down a road of, well, I'm not going to be able to change business as mission models. That is what it is, out of my control. It's been going on for decades. But it was on our heart to start a thing called Third Wave Missions, which was focused to mentor, train, and coach people that want to be entrepreneurs that could make an impact through their businesses, in the communities, and in their own people. And so we started down that road, and I got connected with as we were studying this, we were trying to figure out, okay, is there anybody doing anything like this that we can learn from? And come to find out, there was a group that had been established for like 30 years, and their focus was the 1040 window, which, if you don't know what that is, that's basically the 10th latitude, 40th latitude, and across the basically Asia, Middle East, and Africa region. And we ran across this group when we were during COVID, and come to find out, the director of it lived in Howell, Michigan, and he was stuck in Michigan when he really wanted to be in Malaysia, where he spent half his year. And so we got a chance to catch up with him over coffee, and learned all about this group called Open Connect, which has been going for like 30 years. And so a little over 2 years ago, they invited us to Cyprus, which is in the literally like you hear about in the Bible. Paul went to Cyprus and all that stuff. So we actually got to go to the island where the conference was, about 70 miles off the coast of Israel. And I was blown away for a week. There's probably about 500 people at this conference, all business owners, all across Asia, Africa, Middle East. And as I was going to this conference, God had already put on my heart that, our business that we've been doing, and what we do is we do 3D modeling for commercial construction. So all this stuff you see, mechanical, HVAC, all that, we draw that in 3D and we coordinate it with, we basically come in after the design team. So after the architects, engineers design a building, we come in and we model it in 3D on behalf of the contractors to make sure that what's designed can be built by real world standards. And that's a long story short, but basically what the designers have is an idea of how the building can go together. We as contractors have to actually physically make it workable. And so this takes months and months to do some of this stuff. But we've been relying heavily on India resources because as I was growing the business, I was a one-man show literally for probably the first 7 years. It was just me and India resources. And God put on my heart, these guys made you very profitable and very successful. I want you to take care of them. And I was like, I've never been to India. I've never even been to Asia. Like you want me to take care of them, and I didn't understand, but I was like, he'll tell me how. And that's one of the things I want to encourage you guys. If you're staying close to God and you hear what he's calling you to do, he'll spell the steps out. You don't have to know how to do it. In fact, I didn't know how to do it, and I couldn't have done it, even if I tried my hardest. So this was in my heart for about 3, 4, maybe 6 months before we went to Cyprus back in 2022. And so we're going there, and I'm like, God, I'm believing somebody's there that can help us, because I don't even know how to begin. And so we go to Cyprus, and I fell in love with this group immediately because these were business people that had a heart to transform countries. And I saw it, and I saw how real it was, like the businesses they were doing. So we were invited to be part of the investment group. And what this group does is they have coaches, mentors, and investors. And running parallel to the conference, they had a group of us, and we were invited to sit in the room. Actually, my hope sent myself and 2 others to this to check it out. And we sat in this room, and I watched all these very successful people. We were reviewing 14 different companies from all over the world. And so for like literally first day, we'd hear their pitch, who are you? What are you doing? What are you trying to do? And then the next day, it was our chance to come back and say, okay, we have an hour. Okay, you said this, this, and this. A little confusing. Can you explain? And so this went on for like a week. This was work. This was not like a vacation. Everybody's like, oh, you went to Cyprus for vacation? No. We went to Cyprus to work and to work hard, And so over the course of that week, I just fell in love with this group because I saw how they mentored and coached. It wasn't, and then at the end of the day, I think that group came together asking for about $1.5 million to invest in their businesses to help them go to the next level. And I watched this group rally around them. And I think pretty much they basically invested about $1.5 million of their own money to help these companies go to the next level. And but I watched how they coached and had a heart for these people. People are like, oh, that's Shark Tank. This was like the Jesus version of Shark Tank. Like, we're not here to take advantage of you. We're here to coach, help you, to help, sharpen your plan if it's a little off, things like that. So long story short, this was a week of like just constant networking. Like, I couldn't sit down at a meal without having lunch with one of the business people or some other missionary somewhere. Same thing at dinner. And it was like, by the end of the night, you're just exhausted. And so this goes on for like a week and a half. And the whole time I'm like, God, there's somebody here I know I'm supposed to meet, but I don't know who, And so the last night I was so exhausted and I was like, I had it. I literally, it's a massive cafe with like probably seat for like 1,000 people. That might be an overstatement, but it was a lot. And I tried to find the most obscure seat I could find because I didn't want to talk to one more person. I was done. And this guy, Caleb, yells at me. He's like, hey, I've been looking for you all week. I'm like, I don't even know who you are, And Caleb's like, I heard you want to start something in India. We're in New Delhi, and we'd love to help you any way we can. And I said, all right. So I just heard him out, and ended up, Caleb and I made a friendship. And over the next year and a half, from 2002 on, he helped get us consultants that we basically, in like, I don't say record-breaking time, because I don't know what record-breaking time, but in my eyes it was, for a country I'd never stepped foot in less than a year, we started our own company called Unidad in India. And I never had to go there. We had a consultant that took us through all the paperwork process. And so about a year ago, this thing officially launched with, we picked 2 people that got put on our heart to make our partners. And they didn't even want a partnership. These are 2 people that live in Calcutta, India. And I actually got to meet them a week and a half ago for the first time face to face. And so Shantanu and Upal, they just wanted better pay. That's all they wanted, better pay to take care of their families. And in India, they were making less than $500 a month. And that was decent pay for them, $500 a month. And so God put on our heart to bless them. And so we ended up tripling their salary for them, which blew them away. And we said, we want to make you partners. And they're like, no, you did enough. You changed our lives forever, helping us start our own business. And long story short, we said, no, we want to give you guys ownership. We understand the nature of India and how it works, that, even though it's not a caste system anymore, it pretty much still is. It's still viewed that way. It doesn't matter where it doesn't matter what you're doing now. It's what your family was, And so we said they wouldn't take anything. I said, guys, at least let us give you each 5%. So we gave them each 5% ownership. And anyway, so that was the beginning of Unidad. And amazing, like just how God told us, He put on our heart, to take care of these people. This group, and one of the things that we said is, look, we don't want to repeat what you just came from, because what you just came from was not good. The situation they came from was a company of 20 people. And when they say 20 people, we're talking the janitor, the receptionist, the marketing person, the accounting person. Maybe half the group was actually production work, but the other half was all overhead. And then of that overhead, 5 of the 25 people were executive level, doing nothing. And in India, like executive level means you've achieved and you don't have to work. You just boss the people around. So they had 5 people with executive level salaries. And I'm like, this doesn't work, business-wise. No business can survive with that, And so sure enough, as COVID was running rampant and continuing on in India, they started playing games with these people's salary where they would cut their salary in half. And I said, why don't they just let people go? And so I got quite the education on India business in the last year and a half. And In India, you know how we have a 2-week customary notice if we're going to leave a job, you say give them 2-week notice? In India, it's 60 days contractual. So when you start with a company, you sign a contract that if you leave, you have to let me know 60 days before you leave. And if you leave early, we're either docking you or we're taking out the person that hired you.
Oh.
Yeah, it's serious. And and so when Upel and Shantanu were going to leave, like they just had it. Their salary's been cut in half once already. And they were 2 of 6 people that were carrying the financial burden of 25 people because the other people didn't have any work, but they kept them employed because to let them go and then to hire them back when they needed a job would be quite the ordeal because you'd have to have at least 60 days to get the new people in possibly, you know? So if you got a job and you got to wait 60 days to get the staff to do it, you're not going to finish that job, you know? You're not even going to start the job because you're going to get fired, you know? And so I understood why they did it, but that was what we were dealing with. So long story short, I'm giving way more backstory than I intended to. I'm sorry. But Shantanu and Upal both had like 20 days to live out on their contract. And then they said, well, we're going to go start our own thing. We don't have any money, but we'd love to keep working for you guys. And that was where like the piece fell. Like God was like, there's your people, build your team. And so Shantanu and Upal have been the 2 owners that have worked with us. And they're incredible. They took from 2 people in less than a year to over 20 people. And so a week and a half ago, I actually got to see the whole team in person and to hear their hearts. Like it blessed me because one of the things God put on my heart was, you know, when we started Collaborative, he told me one thing. He said, it's supposed to be it's a seed business, which I didn't understand at the time, but I'll unpack that later. But, and he's like, I want you to bless these people that work for you. I want you to challenge them to dream bigger, and this has become kind of my mantra, and I have to be careful how I do this in an interview, but when I interview people, I said, you know, and one of the things with one of our company cultures is we want to help you grow and push through ceilings that you face and that you don't even recognize that you have in your life. And then we want to celebrate when you leave. And they look at me kind of cross-eyed, and I'm like, what I mean by that is if your dream is to work for Collaborative for the next 30 years, it's not a big enough dream. You know, we want to challenge you to dream big so that when you leave, we can celebrate you leaving because you're going on and chase your dreams. And it seems stupid because as a business owner, I'm basically going to train them to leave. You know, but that's the calling I feel like God's put on my heart is to basically grow this group so that they can be game changers in the world when they leave. And it seems dumb, and so many times I've questioned, like, do I even talk about this God? Because I'm training people to leave our business from day one, you know? And he's like, don't worry about it. I told you to start it. I told you how to run it. You're going to be just fine, you know? And so, and I actually lost it. I didn't lose a guy. I just didn't get him. I had a call yesterday with one of my guys, and he said, yeah, Rob's not really interested in joining. He's like, because your message for him during the interview it kind of threw him off. He's like, I don't know how to handle this guy. You know, and he's like, it was a little much for him. I said, I get it, and I'll have to pray more, you know, about how I talk to people, you know, and all that. But I try to be real with people when I'm interviewing them on the way joining our company. Like, this is what you're joining. You know, you're joining a team that wants to help you grow, you know. But so anyway, a year and a half later, we've got an awesome team in India that I got to hear their hearts. Like, so I spent 6 hours at a hotel with them, you know, kind of like a company meeting. And I got to hear their hearts of how their lives have changed, how they're so excited to work with Shantanu and Upal who don't lord over them like traditional bosses. And it's so counter to India's culture because India's culture it's like a chief mentality. When you're in charge, you're the chief. Everybody does what you say. It's even in the family, you know, hierarchies like that, you know. When you're the head of the family, you tell people what they can and can't do. And I'll tell a little bit of how that impacted Upel as I get into this. So that came out of Cyprus. And so my wife and I went back to Thailand because every year they move this group around. Every 2 years we get together and do this event. And so this year we actually got to go as an investor to Thailand. And the message I kept hearing over and over again resonated so close to my heart was, this is God's business. And I heard a group out of Kazakhstan that said this over and over again, which was so cool. The husband and wife, Dan is from California. His wife is from Three Rivers, Michigan. Dan had grown up in an entrepreneur family, and so he went with a vision to Kazakhstan. Actually, no, this was stateside, I think, first. He wanted to be an entrepreneur just like his dad. And so he went out there and just started trying to build a business. And I don't even know what the business was. I just know it failed and cost him hundreds of thousands of dollars. And as Dan was sharing this with me, he's like, I was so devastated. You know, I wasn't even 30 yet, and I'd just blown hundreds of thousands of dollars. of my family's money, you know, and I was like, God, what do I do? And he's like, all right, are you done playing around? He's like, what do you mean? He's like, are you ready to run my business? And I smiled when I heard that, because that's how I felt like God was when we started Collaborative. Was, this is my business just for you to steward and to run. And so as Dan was talking, Dan was like, I don't want to do business. He's like, I failed horribly. He's like, because you were chasing your dream in your business. He's like, I'm asking you to run mine. And so Dan agreed. And so Dan has such a cool business. It's called the King's Grill. And God gave him a vision to build this incredible outdoor grill for him. Basically, like, he was building something like a dream outdoor, it's like a big, like, stainless steel table with a grill right down the middle, you know, and like, just gorgeous. I saw pictures of it. And so he slowly built that over the next couple months. And the day he finished it, I was so excited to, like, you know, hey, God, I built the table for you. You know, and he even calls it the King's Table. And the day he finished it, he got a random call. Hey, I want this table. And what the guy described as what he just built. And Dan's like, why did I mess around for 9 months? He said, why did I just focus, you know? But anyway, he modeled a business.
Is that if you build it, they will come? Is that what?
But Dan, so God gave him a vision to build the King's Grill. And so this is a great example of these teams we're working with. So Dan's built this business around building high-end grills for wealthy clients. And in the Kazakhstan, I don't know all the Kazakhstan. There's like 10 nations right there, like Pakistan, Afghanistan. They all understand, you know. And I think they're in Kyrgyzstan. And they're in Kazakhstan, right next to Kyrgyzstan. But anyway, you got to look at a map. It's confusing, but they're all like right next to each other. But anyway, so they ended up in Kazakhstan, and they've been building this business and selling these grills. They've had such favor. He has done personal outdoor kitchens for 3 of the 10 wealthiest people in that region. I mean, these are his clients, and he's able to minister to them, welcome into their homes, you know, like, it's the favor he's had has been incredible. And the heart he has been to train the people locally. Because one of the challenges in that part of the world is a lot of the young men leave because they have to become migrant workers to go make an income to support their families, because the wealth isn't in their country. The wealth is in Russia, it's in China, you know, it's in neighboring countries. And so, so a lot of these people, I heard this over and over again 2 weeks ago, was they're trying to do things to help supplement these people's income so that they can stay local. And there's been some problems that have been caused because of this migration. So, for example, the church has had great heart what they try to do, but sometimes the ramifications of what happens is very bad. And the example of in Kyrgyzstan was there's a group there that's trying to build these chicken coops that are like, it's basically a small shed that one of them can hold 160 chickens, one can hold 480 chickens. And the idea behind it is they're trying to make it so cheap that they can sell them to locals so that they can create supplemental income, and they'll teach them how to sell the eggs to locals. You know, they kind of train them up on business strategies of, okay, if you buy one of these, here's how you can make $300 extra a month for your family. $300 extra a month isn't going to keep their sons from going away yet, but if they can get 2 or 3, then the sons can stay home. But what was happening was, even though they were getting conversions to Jesus, these kids would still have to leave to go make money. And so what the church did, which they were trying to do, was, what if we pay someone to stay home? And it was a noble cause, but the ramifications were so negative in the culture, because what it basically looked like was, if you're a Hindu or if you're a Muslim or whatever, you're selling out to be a Christian so you can be paid to stay home.
Oh.
So now, if you're a Christian, you look like a seller. It was intended to try to keep Christians local to get influence, but the impact was so negative. You know, so some of these people, it's like they have to fix some of these things that the church thought was a good thing to do, which imploded, you know. So it was interesting to hear these different business strategies of how to right an unintentional wrong, you know.
It kind of runs contrary to Jesus' instruction to go into all the world, not stay.
But the challenge they're facing is like a lot of the Christian leaders, young men, you know, in this world, the males are the leaders of the family. You know, it's centuries old, you know.
As they should.
Yep. And so now they're leaving. You know, they're always leaving. You know, and so it's not having the impact they want in the countries. You know. So anyway, these are just some of the things that we're like, as I'm learning, working with these different companies, is what's going on. One group that I was instructed to pick one. There was 10 companies there, but pick one that you think is having the best influence that we can support. And this one actually was near and dear to my heart. It's her name is Melissa. She has a company called Wildcats, and this is not my message, by the way. This is just me catching up on what I did for the last 2 weeks of my life. But she has been burdened in her heart that this generation, the Gen Z generation, is, if you look at the stats of what's going on with them, like with the whole gender issues, the whole mental health crisis they're facing at such a young age. I mean, they haven't even hit life's real challenges yet. I mean, they're in high school still, maybe college, and they haven't even faced real life, and they're already melting down. And so there's a term now called the quarter life crisis that Gen Z is facing. By the time they're 25, they've hit their crisis in life, and if not sooner. And what Melissa was honing in on was their lives are online. And when a real life crisis happens where a family member dies or gets sick or something happens, they lose their home, whatever it is, their friends are not their friends that they thought they had. They all disappeared because they were just all on a screen. And so when they need them, they're not there. And so what got put on her heart was, I need to blur the line between what they call IRL in real life and on your screen. And so that's what her team has done, is they're developing an app, but they've been doing it with ad hoc stuff for now, where they create the community online, which is natural for these kids to get involved with, these young people. And then they vet them so that it's not just, you don't get, like, you can't really get in a group unless you got someone that invites you. At least it is how it is right now. And then they have some of the influencers that are on the thing create in-life events, like at a coffee shop, or they get an entrepreneur or an influencer to come in and speak to them. And they get them out, and I've seen some of the pictures. Some of these groups are 30, 40, 50 people strong, show up in person, and they're building the real life relationships now. So they've got the relationships with the same people they're talking to online. And what Melissa has seen in a short time is over 20% of them are converting to Jesus because they really have a friendship now, and they have a relationship to build on. Melissa was cracking me up, though, because she was saying how I didn't train to be a pastor. She's like, but I got forced into being one. She's like, because as I'm leading this as a business strategy, she's like, I see their lives online. So like, hey, I don't know their names, but she's like, one of the girls just got converted to Jesus, and she's so excited. But then all of a sudden she's in the Buddhist temple, still doing her thing, even though she has Jesus there with her at times, and she's like, but the easy thing for me though is I can see the lost sheep now, because I see them, because they post everything on their phone. So she's like, it's so easy for me, like, hey, come back, let me explain. Another girl, one of her family members got healed as they're praying, speaking on the name of Jesus over the family, and the family got healed. So now this girl's going over speaking the name of Jesus, but she's doing it in the manner of like her Buddhist training of, you just say it enough times, it'll happen. And she's like, okay, there is power in that, but let me teach you, the person behind it that heals, Yeah. And so it just, anyway, if you can't hear my heart, I love this group. This group is, for lack of better words, my tribe. I feel like I found my tribe in life, and this is it. But so that's what I was doing in Thailand. We were working with these groups. And what I love about this too, we had a lot of great conversations that, do you have to be a business owner to change the world? No. And in fact, at that thing, there were probably about 500 people with their families there. Probably 2/3 of them were employees working, or let's say we'll call them apprentices working with the business owners that were there. So the business owners came and they brought some of their team. And so this group was starting to kind of, okay, I know we're putting all of our attention on the companies and how we can train and coach and invest in the companies, but what about the people? Like, what can we do to train and coach them? And a lot of them are really like in a Timothy and Paul relationship. They're learning. For example, there's a group there, Theusch Resorts. They're about 50 miles south of Singapore, and the gentleman and his wife were there, and they had like their whole team there. I was like, man, you guys got like 8 people here. He's like, yeah, we brought the whole team, and they've got like these above water rooms out on the water there south of Singapore. Really cool. I was telling my wife, I'm like, we need to go there next year. Let's celebrate a nice vacation with the kids, and go support some of these people that are doing some cool stuff for Jesus, and so. And so I've been praying too. I'm like, because one of the challenges for us with India is we don't feel called to be in India. We feel called to take care of the people and do what we did there, but we don't feel like we're called to move there. And so I was talking to one of the coaches, Tom, and I said, Tom, this group has a tremendous amount of apprentices in it, doesn't it? He said, yeah. I said, man, if you have any that want construction or 3D modeling training, I said, I would gladly coach, mentor, train one of them and put them right on the ground with our team in India. He's like, we'll get you somebody. So just a huge answer to prayer, because the people in India don't want to just take care of them financially. It's the relationship for Jesus. We've been upfront and honest with them that, to the point where they're like, hey, we prayed to your Jesus today. I'm like, that's awesome, Lapel. We'll take it, But they get it, we walk our faith out with them that, whenever they face a problem, we're like, well, my partner Todd and I, we're always like, we'll pray for them. We'll put this, and they've watched answer prayer after answer prayer after answer prayer after answer prayer. And they're seeing it, they're seeing it firsthand, and they recognize it, everybody at the team is like, oh, what do your tattoos mean? And I'm like, all right, here we go. I'm not throwing Jesus in their face, but if you ask, I'm going to tell you why they're on my arm, And so got to have a lot of those, impromptu conversations with the team models there. But that's kind of what we've been doing. It's again, I love this group. I think coming through Club 52, that was kind of the heart, was to build businesses that can change the world. And so this has been such a great next step in my life from Mount Hope and what they've trained me up to do. But what got put on my heart today was, most of us in here are business owners. If not, we're learning to be one. And one of the things that got put on my heart is, this really is his business. I can't ever take credit, because the story of how I even got started was just faithfully following steps that he put in my life and told me to do. I still remember the day that he told me, I was at Pastor Dave's condo in Florida. It was after an event at Club 52, and I went down to Florida with my wife and I. And I couldn't shake one of the speaker's comments. And it wasn't his message, but something he said was, he had to have a 2-year exit strategy from Disney. And so I went down for vacation with my wife, and I couldn't shake it all week. It was 2 years from now, God's like, you're going to start your own business. And I'm like, I don't even know what to do. But one thing I've learned is that if you're following God, you don't have to know the steps. You really don't. You just got to know him. He'll tell you the step at the right time. And so for the first year, I racked my brain. I was like, what is it going to be? I'm meeting with John O'Leary. I'm meeting with Ray Tadgerson. I'm meeting with Rick Brown, 3 of the mentors that kind of rallied around me at the time. And they're like, what do you want to do? I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know, but I know he said 2 years from now. And it was about a year of those guys patiently meeting with me, just having lunch with me, talking to me, brainstorming with me. It was about a year in before Ray Tadgerson said, hey, you're already an expert at what you do. And I was like, what are you talking about, Ray? Because I was early 30s, and I didn't view myself as an expert. I just, was playing around with tech in a construction company. He said, everybody in Michigan looks at you as an expert at 3D modeling for commercial construction. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, everybody in my practice knows if they got a question, they call you. Everybody, he's like, you're speaking at all these events. You're actually training people. He's like, you're the guy. And so once Ray brought that to my attention, we really honed in for the next year of, let's build a business around this. And so, but again, it was just following God's obedience of, this is his business. And he also gave me one other word, which this one rattled me for a while, which was, this is a seed business. And I was like, I don't understand that one. Because you build a business to be successful, to make money. And I don't get that one. So literally 2 years to the month that I told you guys about, we started Collaborative. Literally 2 years to the month. And I was like, oh my gosh. I didn't have to know every step to get there. I just had to know God and do the next step he told me to do. And I try to encourage people to do I'm going to try to stay on point here because these messages will come out here in these points here. Mm-hmm. But going back to my wife and I first getting married, we already knew we were called to be missionaries, but we didn't fit. No matter how hard we tried, I was approved to be on staff of Campus Crusade to go work in the college campuses. That didn't happen. For whatever reason, it just fizzled out. People were like, oh, you guys should go be missionaries in a country. And we're like, it never happened. All the things just never happened, but we knew we were called to be missions. And it was in 2004, we were at a conference, Bob Harrison's conference called Increase.org as a ministry. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of Miles Monroe, but Miles Monroe was on stage from me to James, and he's looking at the audience, but I swear he's looking right at Jen and I in the front row. He's like, if you guys go on to be missionaries, he's pointing at the audience. He's like, you're going to mess up God's ecosystem. He's like, you're called to be kings and queens in the marketplace. He's like, because there you'll send 1,000. And you can go yourself. And that was the moment in our life where Jen and I were like, we get it. Like, there was two sides of the coin. We kept looking at the mission side. We didn't realize the backside was missions. But what was ironic was it kept being on our heart, even though we didn't connect this, was Paul always intrigued us. Like, Paul literally was a tent maker. And I was like, I would love to be like that, where God says go, I can pack up my business and move to where he tells me to go. And so it was ironic as I was like preparing for today. Did you guys know Paul wrote 13 of the 27 New Testament books while he was running a business? So it was like, you look at like his example, like he could be obedient. When God said pack up and go to the next city, he financially could go do it. I can pack up my tent business and move on, open shop, do what God's needs me to do, pay my own bills, not be a burden on people. And that always echoed in my heart at a young age, at a younger age, let's not say young age, that I didn't want to be a burden on people. We want to be a blessing to people wherever we went. And so when Miles spoke that over our lives, we were like, oh my gosh, this makes sense, And then he also put it on my heart that as I started understanding the seed business thing, what I started to grasp from it was we're creating this business to bless other people. And we started to realize we were sowing in other people's lives. And like the whole vision of we want to train you so that when you leave, we can celebrate, that couldn't have rung truer, that we're planting seeds in their lives so that we can help them launch and plant other businesses so how they can make an impact. And so we've watched this happen. Almost everybody that works with us has a side hustle. We coach them carefully on this, like don't let it be a distraction. But we do know our mission is to help improve your family. Like one of our guys is now a certified drone pilot, for stuff. And we've been able to bless Cole's family by, hey, when we have a client that needs it, we don't need to develop that in-house capability. You developed it, and it runs parallel with what we do. We'll just have you put a small commission in there for us because we help get the client to you, And so we're able to bless his family with extra income, and it's not a distraction from what we do. It runs parallel. We had people always think of like, let me explain some of our incredible trophy projects we've worked on. We are currently working on Harvard's Art Theater in Boston. We're drawing the electrical for this brand new theater for Harvard University. We've done work at Facebook and Meta's headquarters out in Seattle, Washington. Like a $1.5 billion project. We were on that project for a while. That's a cool story in of itself too, because we got brought in right as the Russia-Ukraine war happened. And this is funny, like for a Lansing-based business, we are so interactive with the world. It's crazy. So we got invited to that Facebook project because the company that was drawing for them was in Kiev. And the war had just broken out, and they called us and said, hey, we need a plan B in case things go bad for this company. And it was like, we said, well, we want you to continue to use them because obviously what they're going through, if they can provide for their families in the middle of this mess, let them keep doing the job. And they said, we understand that, but our responsibility is to Facebook first. And we need to protect them as a client. And I said, well, I understand that, but they need it more than we need it. So hold on to them as long as you can. And they did. And there was a clean break, and then they brought us in. So we got to work on Facebook and Meta's headquarters. We do so much work for Amazon, it's ridiculous. I still think we still give them more money than they've given us. I try to run the numbers sometimes, but I think they still got us. But we've done so many data centers down in Indiana and Ohio for Amazon. A lot of the facilities around, like the one over there, we did that one. Long story short, though, I don't even know how I got off on this, but we've been blessed with these great projects, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, like the projects you guys have worked on. In my career, I've been blessed I've got to picture myself working on the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. Like I'm standing on the Capitol Dome, and just God's blessed us. He's blessed us tremendously. But the trophies for me are people and the achievements in their life. Like, I'm going to do this one day in our office. Unfortunately, our office is all glass windows on the front side, but Bob Harrison, who I love his ministry, he says most people don't see it when they come to our office, but if they pay attention when they walk out, the wall is covered with all the life trophies of the people that we ministered to, like the achievements they've achieved in life. And I look at mine and I'm like, it's mentally in my head. Tawny, who unfortunately just recently left our team, 2 trophies in her life that I was so excited to be a part of was she wanted to move from near Traverse City, Michigan to down south. But she's like, I don't know where to look for land or whatever, and I don't have the time. I said, Tawny, I said, you work remote. I'm like, why don't you guys just get a fifth wheel and travel over the southern states until you find what you want? So they did that for like 4 months, and our team got to like virtually like live through seeing her pictures daily with their families. They went from state park to state park to find what they wanted. And then they found their dream property right on, like they love bass fishing, so they were right on one of the competitive, like where they run like competitions. It's 5 minutes from her house. So she gets to live off of like world-class bass fishing, And so like I've got a picture saved of them traveling. Another one was her husband hated this job. and he was trying all different types of career things. And they had the opportunity to buy one of those Japanese like action figure, stores that you see in the mall. They were able to buy one of those, and that's not what he does for a living. Is he runs that store. And I'm like, that's the thing that gets me excited in life was we were able to help train and coach Tawny and her husband Ryan so that they could chase their dreams. And they were able to do it all while working for us and be an incredible part of our team. One of my partners, Todd is so, you guys ever meet him, he's been here from time to time, but he's so ridiculously, like if you talk about something that's goal oriented, he has it planned down to the month. Like, what am I going to do this month? What am I doing next month? What am I going to do by the end of this year? And he checks them off like meticulously. But one of his dreams was he was so specific to, I want to buy a house off the East Bay of Traverse City. I want it to be off market, and I want it to be under the market value. And I want it to happen like whatever the month was, like the year. And sure enough, it all played out exactly how he dreamed. He was able to buy an off-market deal. He bought a house that's probably worth $800,000 now for like $550,000, off market. And it was off the East Bay, like 5 minutes off the East Bay of Traverse City. So that's one of my, so he sent me a picture a week after they moved up. It's him and his wife. It was his wife and the 2 girls. And it's one of those cool silhouette pictures where the sun is setting in the background over the bay. And I'm like, I've got that one saved. That's another one of my trophies in life is like their accomplishment. And I could probably go on and on, but that's like the one thing I put on my heart is this is his business for his people. And he's given my wife and I the incredible ability to mentor, train, and coach them, but to also provide great jobs for them. I was looking at examples of the Bible of some of these people. So, I talked about Paul. It's kind of like what Boaz did with Ruth, right? He had a business where he was able to bless the local community. He ended up meeting his wife do it, and you got a story to this day because of a business owner who had the ability to take care of people's needs, With that, taking care of other people's needs, I didn't see these ones coming, but I always talk about, one of the things I talk about with our people is this business can never be more important than your family. It never should be. And that's always a gauge. When I see that this business becomes more important than their family and their families are suffering, that's when I call time out and I say, hey, let's talk about this because this isn't healthy. And actually, I mentioned Todd. I have to do this with Todd all the time and James knows this story too well. James and I have had breakfast many times talking about some of these situations. I don't want to say evil is not the right word, but he's a necessary force in our company that has to be managed because he can run people over, and including his family. And so even though he's so driven, there's negative side effects that come with this. And so when I talked about how when you start a business, you're starting a second family, here I am mentoring critical people in our company so they don't blow up their lives. Is that really my job? No. But if you care about your people, you got to take some ownership of it, And not only does he run his family over, he'll never admit it. And I know his wife barely know her because she's not that type of person that wants to have a relationship with the team, And I don't blame her. It's her family, She doesn't need to be part of this. But I can see how Todd's running ragged. I had a conversation with him just Tuesday, and I said, we got to fix this. I said, both you and I are running too ragged right now, and I know it's affecting your family. And I saw him take a deep breath, and I was like, I said, we have to fix that because it can't be like this. You can't sacrifice our family for the sake of the business. And I take these things serious because I feel like God has called me to minister to these people through business. And so with that, that's one thing. It's like Todd is like my constant. I don't see a project because he's unofficially 10% owner of the company. That's a story for another day. But it's not going to do any good if I run him into the ground. I have to he's a guy that's so driven that he really needs a mentor, and he refuses to take one. I really wish in life he'd grab a mentor, because that mentor would be able to say the hard things that I have to say to him, But this one hit me recently too, and this one was where God was like, "What are you gonna do about this?" So we hired a guy it's been about 3 months now. When we hired him, he was to come on board and help one of our teammates that was swamped. So we brought him on. As soon as he came on board, the teammate that was leading quit. And I was like, oh, because she was an all-star. Like, she was an all-star on our team. And she had been begging for help. And she was trying to find the help. I was trying to help her find the help. We just couldn't find. Like, our people are like unicorns. So it's like we're not going to go find somebody off the street that I can go say, hey, jump in and help. It's like, it's very specific training, and very specific skill sets. And so Tawny leaves, and Ty has a meltdown. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do here? Like, he's literally MIA, not answering the phone, not answering messages. And I'm always one, I've learned this from Pastor Dave and many others, that, and I don't know the exact scripture, but the scripture was, like, it's a king's nature to search a matter out, but it's God's heart to cover a matter. And I get that because it's for healing. If I can cover the matter, there's healing possible. If I expose it, so much damage that can't be fixed. And so I'm sitting here, I'm like, what do I do with this guy, Ty? Like, literally, he just started with us like 3 weeks ago. Do I fire him? Like, I can't even get a hold of him. The team's asking, where's he at? And the whole time, I'm telling the team, like, guys, I got it under control. We're like, I don't have it under control. But I'm like, I'm handling it. And God's like, you said this team, your heart here is to cover the people, take care of the people. This went on for over a month. Sometimes Ty would answer my calls. Sometimes he wouldn't. What he was dealing with is a mental breakdown. He literally melted down. He's like in his early 30s. And I'm like, this was still going on when I was overseas. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, it was even worse because now I'm half a world away and I can't get a hold of the guy. And once in a while he'd call me. He's like, I think I'm doing better. I'm going to be there tomorrow. Tomorrow will come. He wouldn't be there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And God's like, you said you'd take care of them. These are your family. You're going to take care of them. And so it really put me to the test of, like, in my head's like, he's only been here for a month. Like, do I really need to deal with this, And, but I just kept praying. And this is where I want to encourage you guys. God entrusted you with these businesses. And fortunately, being in Thailand, one of the guys, Dan, I talked about earlier, he's like, it's God's problem. You don't have to figure it out. And I'm like, and so I really leaned into God during this time and said, this is your problem, God, but you're using me as a chance to play a role in this guy's life. What do you want me to do? He's like, I want you to cover for him because he's not going to heal if you expose him. Because there's a lot of shame that goes with mental health crisis, And so I covered for Ty for like a month and a half. And I basically assigned him to me, even though he wasn't doing any work for me. I assigned him to me so that the team wasn't exposed to working with him. And after about a month and a half, like, it got so bad, his wife flew his family into town to like deal with him, to help like break him out of all this. And so I was like, God, I need a solution here because I don't know how to fix this. And he said, I want you to put him under Brandon and Heather, and because he didn't sign up to be a leader of a project, he got thrust into that. And that's what started the crisis. I'm not equipped to do this. I don't know how to do it. And one of the things I learned from one of my mentors, Guy Richardson, is profiles. And I was looking at his profile. I'm finally at a point where I'm getting mature enough now, and James is laughing about this, but where I can look at these myself and I can sort them out.
It takes a while. Instead of
picking up the phone and saying, Guy, what do I do here? In fact, when I called Guy about this crisis, all he did was send me, here's his reactions under stress. He just took a screenshot of it. And I was like, I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I'm dealing with.
Exactly. And
so then now I knew, okay, you got to deal with the stress and find a solution. And so I was praying about it and God told me, put him under Brandon and Heather. He needs nurturing leaders that aren't going to run him over, that are going to care about him and take care of him. And so I did that, and he snapped out of it like that. And I said to him, Ty, please do me one favor. Don't make me look like a fool for having patience here. He's like, man, no one has ever done this in my life for me. He's like, you, like, I don't know the exact words, but basically he's like, what's the, you ever seen the movie, I It's got Jim Caviezel in it, where he was in prison. Count of Monte Cristo. You ever seen that movie?
Yeah.
It's a great movie. But long story short, Jim Caviezel has to fight this guy. And they're supposed to fight to the death because one of the pirates stole something. And he brought dishonor to the team. He's like, you want a spot on our boat? You guys got to fight to the death. And so he basically beat him, but didn't kill him. And he stopped. And he's like, and he basically said, spare this man. They got you got your show you wanted. You humiliated the guy, but now you have 2 people. And the guy that lost basically said, I'm your servant for life because you spared my life. And it was kind of, he didn't say it exactly in words, but that's what Ty presented to me was, you will never regret this. And I appreciate, you don't know how much I appreciate you guys. For somebody so new in my life that you guys showed this care, And so my iPad keeps timing out. I'd love to get to a Q&A session, though, because I love doing Q&A rather than just me talking all the time. There we go. So that's one of the things God's put on my heart is to take care of our people's needs. We need to produce products and they get it. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, you got to do your job. We get that. We all have to do our job. But it's been Jenna and I's heart that this is our family. This is our second family. And we have a chance to change their lives. And just like when a kid's hurting, your teammate's going to hurt at times. And so this was another example of that. We've got many more, but I don't want to. Sometimes it'll come across as like, look what we did, and it's never the intent because trust me, I didn't want to deal with the situation in the first place. But one of the next things that I feel like we have to do as a business, and these are principles, not only business but in family life. They run so parallel in my life that I can't separate them sometimes. But teaching our people, teaching them how to grow. Back to one of the people that I spent a lot of time investing in. We had a hard conversation one time of, he said, man, he's the only one in our team that knows that I have an exit strategy. God has called me to so many things, and starting Collaborative was for a season, but God has got other things he wants me to do, and I'm praying of how that exit strategy works. I was hoping to be less than 2 years, but it's been more than 2 years and we're still going. But one of the things Todd said, because he's kind of the one person that makes the most sense to take over, he said, man, when you leave, this team's going to leave with you. I said, why do you say that? He's like, they don't like me.
Hmm.
And I said, why do you think that is? And he's like, I don't know. I said, I think I know. And I was like, you want me to tell you? And he's like, sure. I said, because they know I care. I said, you're a great leader, but I don't think any of them know how much you care about them. I said, that's why I think they struggle with you where they don't struggle with me. He's like, you're like the favorite parent. I'm like, I don't intend to be that, but they know they can come to me because they know I care. I've watched Terry, you've had this in your business for many years, people run into you, when they have situations in life, And so a lot of that, I've learned many things from how he's led his team. So with your team, you have that decision. You can be hard and disciplined. It's every person's call. There's each one of my kids I have to, in my family, my wife and I have 5 kids. I have to take a different approach to each one of them. I have a son, my oldest son. His approach was, man, we just had to beat that kid with a wooden spoon. That was what it took to get his attention because he would argue with us all day long, even though he was 100% wrong. He would try to win on a technicality all the time. I'm like, a technicality, you might technically be right, but your attitude's 100% wrong. And that's the issue here. And that's with your team. Each person is different, and you can't, and this is why I've really honed in on using profiles. Anybody we hire on our team, I have a profile on. And this little test takes them 10 minutes to do. But these things are enlightening. It's helped me to make sure that I put teammates in the right place. For example, we just hired a guy recently. It's probably the most expensive hire we've done out of the gate. Actually, he is the most expensive hire we've ever done out of the gate. And my vice president was really offended by the price. And I said, look, judging by his profile and judging by what we know about him, he's going to be worth every penny we spend on him. And that was a little bit and I even had to go over the profile with my vice president and say, here, when my mentor guy saw his profile, he's like, get this guy. He's like, these are proven performers that you will never regret hiring. And so when we got him, my vice president was like, well, as much as we're paying him, he should just hit the ground running. I said, no. No one ever hits the ground running. There's a soft landing, and then they got to get into their stride. And I said, he's like, he's asking 100 questions. I said, if you look at his profile, I told you he was going to ask you a bunch of questions because he wants to fully understand the game plan and what the client needs before he takes the ball from your hands. He said, I don't have time for that. I said, you need to make time because that time spent, you won't have to do again once. I said, you got to do it one time though, and what ended up being a big frustration out of the gate between the two of us about this person ended up being a complete handoff where that guy is running with one of our most important clients and killing it, like to the point where our clients are like, oh my gosh, you got any more of him? We're like, only right now we only got one, you got him, so be thankful, But, understanding your team and how they work together, and as business owners, I really would encourage you guys, learn how to evaluate your team and how they go together. Because I'm able to head off problems and put people in the right spots that would have caused months of frustration. We've even backed away from some people because we use the profile as the last step before we hire somebody. And I've passed on a couple people because as soon as we saw the profile, we're like, oh, there's red flags here. And when I went back to one of the people that recommended him, I said, hey, is this person dealing with X, Y, and Z? And they're like, yeah. They're like, how do you know? They said, did they tell you in the interview? I said, no. I said, we have a profile on them, and it looks like these are internal things they're dealing with. And he's like, yeah, now that you mention it. And I said, well, these aren't really things that we can solve in our business, and I don't want to have to solve in our business. So as much as he looked good on he killed the interview. In the interview, I was like, oh my gosh, he did awesome. But things were exposed in the profile that were internal conflicts that we couldn't solve in his life. And so we passed on him, and the guy, the professor later on told me, he's like, it's probably a good move. Now that you brought it to my attention, I've seen those struggles daily in his life. I understand them now. But he didn't know what was coming from him. And the stupid piece of paper showed it to us,
And sometimes those don't say good or bad person, just not fit for this job. That's the key.
Yeah, and that was exactly it. Like, he's probably I'm sure he's gone on to do great things in his career, with his degree and all that, but he wasn't the right fit for us.
So what is the profile? We've used several, but what is the...
It's called PDP. It's a combination of the old strengths. What is it? DISC, D-I-S-C.
Yeah.
This is DISC times 100 on steroids. PDP works, I think, is
global. I think it's called
PDP Global. Yeah, I can get you the information on that.
I can show you one afterwards.
God taught me to use it, and it changed.
It's
everything.
a game changer.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
It takes a while to wrap your brain around it.
I've been looking at them for 3 years, and I finally look at them, and I'm like, okay, I think I got this.
Yeah. Yeah, I did the same thing. I would call guys and guy, could you talk to me about this person?
Yeah. One of the things too, as a business owner, you guys understand strategic relationships, business relationships, personal relationships. One of the things I can't stress enough, if you're listening to God daily, and he's telling you what to do, I've done some of the most, we'll say, asinine things because God told me to do it. And then relationships came out of it that people are like, what in the world? And it's turned into beautiful things for our business and for me personally in life. For example, like you look at like King Solomon with incredible wisdom. So much peace was brought to his nation through him leaning into God, learning from God. People came from around the world to visit his kingdom, and he was smart enough to make alliances with them. In fact, he brought so much peace because of all his network. He was probably Israel's most successful, peaceful king during his reign. And granted, did he have to marry 1,000 different, wives to get there? It's not going to be a strategy God was asking me to do, right? But there's wisdom in following God and taking the steps and building those friendships. Like right now, there's going to come a point for you guys in business where you're going to have, as your success grows, that people start to lean into you and they want to pull you into their things so that you can bring their success with them in it. And I'm not saying it to beat my chest because I put a lot of praise to God and mentors that have helped me get there. But that's where I'm at in this phase in life. As I'm starting to work on my exit strategy from collaborative, there's all these opportunities in front of me. And in fact, listening to God has actually been a blessing where people have given me half their business. Like right now, I'm part owner in a business. I did nothing to build a business the first time. But God told me to hire this person when they were going through a crisis in their life. And my whole team was against me, like, why are you hiring that person? He makes no sense. And in fact, I got pushback every day this person was on our team from one in particular vice president. I only have one vice president. But he just didn't like this person. And I said, God told me to hire him. He's here until God tells us to move him out, you know? Through this, and again, this is where you got to follow God and you got to know what God tells you to do. God told me to hire him to help save his marriage. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm running a business here. I'm not saving people's marriages, you know? But he told me to hire him because his marriage is falling apart. And I was like, I can never make this a conversation in a business meeting. Here's why he's here, you know? Like, how do you cover once again, you know? And so we hired this gentleman. And he did pretty good for us, but he was only with us for a year. And the Holy Spirit told both of us when it was time for him to go. And on his way out, he's like, I'm going to relaunch. You know, and actually I knew what he was going to do, and I felt like God told me what was going to happen too. It's just one of my points later on with Jeremiah. But God will tell you things. And again, you got to learn to hear God's voice. And how you hear it, I'm not the judge of that. You know, that's between you and God, and as you learn his voice in your own life. But God's given me so many cheat codes and shortcuts in life because I've heard what he's told me to do, and I've been obedient to do it. And one of the things, too, here, for those of you that are married, this is for you to take how you want to take. But on anything critical in our business, my wife and I have to be in agreement. And it's funny because this specific person we hired, I said, you do realize the last thing is Jen and I got to be in agreement on hiring you. He's like, cool. When do I get to interview with her? I'm like, you don't. He's like, what do you mean I don't get to interview with her? How's she going to know? I said, bro, she has a relationship with God. She hears his voice. And that's all she needs. She doesn't need to hear your voice. He was like, what? I'm like, and this is the great thing about being a business owner. I can have these conversations with people on the way in. I can't ask them where they stand, but I can tell them where I stand. And I do this a lot. And actually, I lost somebody recently because one of the guys, Brandon, was like, he's like, you kind of came across preachy is what he said. I said, I don't really care. He knew what he was getting, you know. It would have been great to have him join our team because we need a person right now like that. But the cool thing was Brandon, who's not a Christian, was like, he's like a dude I told him, he's like, that's not who you are. You're never preaching to people. I said, Brandon, I strategically do that on the way in so they know who they're getting when they come in. You know, they're getting a person of faith and a person that cares. If they don't want that, that's fine. That's not, you know, they can judge me. I'm not judging them, you know. He's like, I try to tell them that's not who you are in day-to-day business. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, it doesn't matter. You know, God's got who he wants on our team. But so with this gentleman that we were interviewing, God told me to hire him. And my wife is an intercessor. She loves to pray. Like literally, I didn't know when I married her what an intercessor really was. And it took quite an adjustment. So like the first Saturday we were married, I was like, you want to go outside? Like, let's go hang out. I want to pray. I'm like, okay. I came back an hour later. You ready to go? I just started praying. I'm like, it's been an hour, like, you know. And it took me several months to get the timing of this, but the woman will pray. I mean, Randy's known my wife before I even married her. And she'll pray 4 or 5 hours if the day will allow. And that's still never enough. Like all day long, our Bible is covered in Bibles and, you know, there's praise and worship going. And it's like, I walk in and it just, at first I used to be like, okay, I don't want to do this. But now I'm just like, whatever, it's like, but so when we were interviewing this guy, I usually hear sooner than she does, but I want to make sure we're in agreement. And so literally this person was like, we had been dragging him off for like 3 weeks. And I literally was down to the wire. I was like, Jenna, if we don't let him know today, we can't talk to him for another 2 weeks because we had something to do. I don't remember what it was. And I said, and I can't expect him to wait around. It's been that would be 5 weeks. That's absurd, you know? And I was frustrated. And she's like, why are you getting frustrated with me? She's like, I haven't heard from the Lord. I'm like, I'm just frustrated in general, okay? And I'm literally walking out of the house. And I didn't talk to her that morning because I'm out of the house usually before she's awake. And I walk out of the house, and 2 steps away from the door, I hear the door burst open. She's like, God told me to hire him. I was like, thank you. Go back to bed. I was like, you know, but that's been the story of our marriages. And I'll tell you this, like, to this day, everybody that we've been in agreement on, I used to say they're still with us. Unfortunately, Tawny just left. But I realized, like, Holy Spirit's like, he checked me in the last, this is a learning lesson for me recently. I was like, what I realized was they've all been very successful with us. And I used to say they're always still with us. But then God was like, if your vision is to train them to do great things when they leave, guess what? They're not always going to do it. I was like, all right, I get it now. We lost the first one that, but I said, everyone that we've been in agreement on, now I have to correct and say they have done exceptionally well with us. The ones that we were in agreement on, I just hired because I had a need, they were gone and they never really excelled with us. There was always something that didn't make them excel well. So is that your calling? I don't know. It's how my wife and I agreed to do business. But so when I let this guy know that we were hiring him, he's like, that's the weirdest interview I've ever done in my life. So I get it, but that's who we are, That's what I love about it. Being a business owner, I can be who God called me to be, and they can judge me however they want. But what I've realized is most of our team is not believers, but one of the people that was with our team, we took them on a trip when we had a certain sales goal, and we took them all to Hawaii for a week. And we took their spouse and them with us. And we're at this conference, and we threw them in the deep end of Bob Harrison's conference, which is like super Christians, like Increase.org is his ministry. It's all about biblical increase and how God blesses you, if you follow his principles. So I took half a company that wasn't Christians and threw them in this environment. And I was like, I don't care, whatever. They can take it where they want with it, But we're having dinner, and Tawny was saying something, and she's talking about a conversation she had with somebody, and she's like, I was talking about my super Christian boss. And I was like, what did you say? She's like, you're a super Christian. And I was like, what is a super Christian, Tawny? And she goes, you do what you say you're going to do. I was like, that's all it takes? And she said, I've grown up around Christians my whole life. She's like, you guys are the first ones that do what you say you're going to do and walk out what you believe God told you to do. I was like, whoa, Like, she never came to Christ while she was with us, and I knew. But it was one of those moments where I was like, thank you, God, for us having a chance to have an impact on her life, and that she saw you for real in her life. So, one of the next things I love about this is being specific, and I'm learning this more and more better every day. Just trying to lean in here, God, what do you want me to do next? What is the next step for our business? What is the next step for our people? What is the next step what is the next step you want? I don't have to fit in a box. And I saw a great example of this in Jeremiah 32:17. In the middle of chaos, God seems to give you directions that make no sense. And if you want to look at this later, but in Jeremiah 32:17, Jeremiah's in prison. Jerusalem is getting besieged. It's about to be sent into captivity for a long duration. You know what God told Jeremiah in the middle of all that? He's in prison. He says, go buy that piece of land. And you'll have to read the story, but it makes no sense. Why would you buy land in the middle of your country being taken over? Is that even going to be an honorable deal at this point, But if you read on after that, God told him to buy that land because that land was going to be the redemption land that his people are going to come back to. And so I look at so many things in my life where God's told me to do something that makes no sense. And we've done it and seen incredible things. Like, for example, back to this gentleman that we hired. God told me to hire him for a season. And I was like, and I had, like I said, half my team was like, no, why is he on our team? And they fought with him. Some of them fought with him the whole day, all day, every day while he was with us. And when we relaunched him back into his business, he said, by the way, I can't do this without you. I want to give you 49% ownership. And so out of obedience, now I have a second source of income that I didn't have to work to build. And God's given us strategic ideas right now, where what he does is he does panelized office buildings and factories and things like that. He was one of the premier installers when he was doing this independently. We took the skill sets we gave him on planning buildings now and put that on top of it. And his clients were like, what in the world? We've never seen this. This is incredible. The preparation work you guys are doing is off the charts. Nobody competes with this business anymore in his world. And not only that, because of God's favor, we were praying, God, give us ideas that, there's books out there called 10X is better than 2X. I don't know if you guys have seen that book at all. But the idea behind it is, I'm not here to speak about this today, but we're seeing this play out right now in our life, is that to double your business, there's 100 ways to do it, right? You can come up with 100 different ideas, put on the table. A lot of people never do any of them because you're paralyzed by the options. If you're going to increase by 10, there's usually a very narrow path to get there. And a great example of this is, and the author talks about it, is his son wanted to play college tennis. And he said, okay, let's get you a coach. And they watched it play out. And there was so many different options of which coach to get that could get him to college, train him enough to be good enough for college. And the dad said, hold on, time out. Let's think bigger. If you wanted to be a pro tennis player, who would you hire as a coach? And they're like, ooh, there's really only one or two that are good enough to get you there. And so Eric and I were talking about this. I said, Eric, if we want to grow this business, I didn't mean to use his name until now, sorry about that. But I said, if we want to grow this business, we can fight with all the chickens that are, competing with us. I said, or we can dream big and dream up a solution. And as we were analyzing what those solutions were, I said, hey, you and I are working on this business house concept. Again, another business opportunity that came to us because of our success, that God used us for. So now we went from owning one business to now we're potentially ownership of 4 to 5 different businesses right now. That's why I need an exit strategy, because I need to get this one out so I can work on the next one. I said, hey, this guy that we're talking to over here for this housing idea we're doing, he owns a whole factory that can build panels just like you've been installing. I said, you wanted to be a rep? I said, if we talk to Mike, he has all the tech. And this is what's cool. God was working on Mike's heart of, I need another income source to use our factory to make more products. We have everything we need. We just need another idea. And so I called Mike and I said, hey, we do these install panels. I said, he's one of the best installers. He has all the ideas. He reps all the companies. He builds for all the companies. We can tell you which ones are the best ideas to take your panel, make it on par or better than everything else in the industry. And so we had this conversation right before I left for Thailand. So the next week or so, we have to go down to this factory. And he's like, I love it. He's like, I don't want to be the sales rep. I don't want to design the plans. I just want to use my factory to build the panels. You guys handle the rest of the company. And I'm like, overnight, there's our opportunity for 10 times growth. And it's a shortcut, with no competition. And it was an idea God gave us. We still have to walk it out, so it's not a given. You have to earn it, But these are the things, when you listen to God, he can take the stress out and push you right to the front of the pack, And then the last thing I love about, and this is for you guys as business owners too as you grow, is you're probably going to see God start to ask you to do things that are unconventional and don't make sense, but they have godly impacts and kingdom impacts. So, for example, for my wife and I, this trip to Thailand, we didn't have to ask anybody to go. We didn't have to raise money to go. We were trusting God. God said, I want you to go. We had all the money to pay for the tickets, pay for the conference, to break free. We could rearrange our schedule. Nobody was controlling our schedule. We could rearrange it and be obedient to God because we trusted him in all these steps. And so we got a chance to go. And like I said, we worked with 10 businesses when we were in Thailand. And I made some incredible relationships. I was able to mentor and coach, for example, one of the guys, Josh. He's in Mumbai. So if you don't know India is now the largest country in the world. I don't know if you guys knew that. They surpassed China a year ago. China's population has been declining. India's been going up. They actually surpassed them about a year ago. And so India is intensely populated. We were driving I'll get off point for a minute here, but we were driving for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I was like, can we please get to a countryside where I don't see, 1,000 people out each window, Never did. Just never did. It was constant population of people, trash everywhere. They're all the rivers are polluted, trash. We see snowbanks. They have trash bottles that just pile up in random places. I mean, it's sad. They just push it there until a city truck can come and pick it up, put it in the dump truck. So I was talking to Josh, and the one thing cool about this group is we had 10 companies that we were working with. A third of them are startups. A third of them are established but need help. And a third of them are well-organized businesses. One of the relationships is actually another 3D modeling company in Turkey. And I knew about his company, and I've talked to him before, but I was like, oh, are we going to have a competitor at the conference that I got to watch out for? No. What we found out was it works with the design side. We work with the construction side. So I was able to make a partnership with John and say, how can I help your business grow? And then how can you get us leads? So here's a guy half around the world that we're able to help both companies, But this guy, Josh, he was a startup. I won't get into the history of why he left the Senate organization, all that, but But Josh is a one-man show trying to build a business and pay his bills so he can be in Calcutta and witness people. Not Calcutta, he's in Mumbai. And so Josh and his mentor, Tom, were talking to me over lunch. And Tom doesn't need my advice. Tom is incredible. Tom passed on Facebook because he was too busy. He's like, his business did so well that when Zuckerberg called him to help launch Facebook, he passed on it, because he was just too busy. And anyway, Tom's incredibly gifted, but Tom and I are talking to Josh, and he's like, what kind of advice do you have for Josh? I said, Josh, just go in there and shut your mouth and ask for help. I said, all those people in there know what you need to do to grow. I said, you put your plan out there yesterday for us. Let these guys with all their years of wisdom just guide you and, shift you along. And I'll tell you, it was one of the most fun presentations to watch because he just humbly stood at the front and said, guys, I'm here for asking for your help. And they laid out a plan that was beautiful for him. And it was different than his plan, but it was better than his plan. And they said, and you came to the table asking for $80,000. You can do this plan with 35. And it'll be successful. And you won't waste borrowing all this money you didn't need to borrow. As investors, it's like they had the money to give them 80. They said, you really need 35. It's the best steward of your skill set for us to equip you, give you a path for 35, and encourage you and coach you through it. Like this was a group I got to watch and hang out with. They weren't there like trying to be piranhas and make money off these people. They were there to coach them. But sorry, let me get back on point. I'm gonna end here in a minute. But so I want to finish with one point here. So that was the relationship I got to build with Josh. Upel. So going back to Upel, who's our business partner. As I got to spend several days with Upel, literally he drove me around everywhere. We basically spent all day together for almost 4 days. And I was learning about Upel. He's one of 4 brothers. He's not the oldest. And in fact, as I learned about Upel, he's the second oldest. His family basically handicapped everything he wanted to do with his dreams in life. He was a very talented soccer player. He wanted to go on to be a coach in the Calcutta soccer leagues. His family actually gave that blessing to his third brother. And a lot of people that know Upel and his brother, they're like, Upel, you were way better than him. But he didn't have the family blessing. His oldest brother, I don't know the full story there, but things didn't pan out as planned. His father just got sick recently where he couldn't be the sole provider for the family. And through what God told us to do to make Upel a business owner and bless him, he has now become the sole provider for his whole family. I'm trying to hold it together, but it was such a blessing to me because here was a kid that his family gave up on. He wasn't going to amount to anything. And now he's probably the richest person in his village. Overnight, he built a business from nothing to 20 people, not overnight, but over a year. His team absolutely loves him and his leadership. When he left the company that he left, they basically badmouthed him all the way out the door that he wasn't nothing. He wasn't, they could replace him in a minute. And the other partner, Shantanu, has this all on video. Because Shantanu was like middle management and recorded it, discreetly. And it was interesting to watch. Like I could see it in Upel's eyes that he felt like in such a short period, all the doubters in his life, he's blown away. His family was ecstatic. Like now he's the favorite son, which is sad. But he's literally providing income for his entire household, his 3 brothers, and he's now the golden child in the family. And now he's the golden child in the village because he had a stupid American in his house. Like I'm probably the only American that's been to that little village. They say village, but it's really older houses all jammed together. And I took so many selfies in like 4 days. Like literally, like every time somebody saw me, they're like, "Can we get a picture with you?" And I'm like, they don't know anything about me. I'm just a white person, But they never seen anybody in their area before. This isn't where he lives. Isn't a tourist area. It's the neighborhood, But that just that blew me away. Like of all the things God's asked me to do, this is His business. He asked me to train and invest in His people. And like I said, at the end of the day, my trophies are the people and what I've watched in life. And so I want to encourage you guys that too. Your team, as you're building business, those are your greatest assets. Your clients aren't as great of an asset as you think they are. Your people are. Without your people, you'll never get the clients. And without those people, following and serving with you, you won't succeed. I'm open for questions.
That was awesome. Thank you.
If anybody has questions, please speak loud because the camera is going to record it, so we just need your questions to be loud. So here.
You guys gotta ask some questions. I said a lot of crazy stuff.
So your first trip to Cyprus was as you were going for people to invest in you.
No, I went there to learn. Yeah, I went there. My hope was trying to figure out this whole idea of business as missions. They call this one business for transformation.
Right.
And a lot of these people came out of business as missions and struggled with the storefront. Like I said at the very beginning, they struggled with how do I have an impact when I have a fake business?
Yeah, maybe you could explain, because there is a difference.
There is a difference. So a lot of these people that are in this thing that they call business for transformation now moved because they had so many issues with getting into a country purely to get a visa through a business that they never made valid. And so if you had employees or acquaintances with that storefront business, a lot of them, it just bothered them to their core that I have a real Jesus, but I'm not a real business. And I'm repping both. And so a lot of these turned a corner and said, we got to fix this. We got to be a real business, because a real business can bless their lives and change their lives. And they get to see us live Jesus every day in the process.
I think it's important to know that these investors are investing not contributions to nonprofits or a donation. They're putting money into business expecting a return.
They are expecting a return. Yep.
And that's what's going to make it a successful business. So
And that's another thing too. They did not want to give money, because when you give money, there's no accountability of how you spend it.
Right.
When you take a loan, there's a responsibility that I need to make good on what I'm going to use this for.
So the gentleman you referred to from Howell is who?
His name's Patrick Lai.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, have you met him?
Yeah, well, yeah. And
He's retired now.
Read his books.
Yep, he's passed on this organization now to Greg and I forget his wife's name, Marsh.
What was the name of the organization?
Open Connect.
Open Connect.
Or Open Net. I think it's Open Network, and I think they call it Open Connect when they do the conferences. Yep. Yeah, but yeah, he retired 2 years ago.
I mean, they used to have a thing called micro business missions where they would, kind of similar, but
There's some businesses in this network that do micro
They do
loans.
micro loan. Okay.
Yep. And that's an interesting story too, because that person went over as a NGO, non-government organization, to the country he was in, and God put on his heart that, no, make yourself a legit bank.
Yeah.
And what was interesting, when he made that shift, that country kicked out every NGO because they didn't like what the NGOs were doing, because you're basically coming in and giving handouts, and does that really help? Because now you become dependent on the handout.
Right.
And so they kicked every group out except him, because he was a legit business. He switched. So
Being invested, so the business as transformation, is that what it's been called, business as transformation?
that's the term they use now, B for T, business for transformation.
Okay.
Rather than business as missions.
So right, but it seems to be like a transition in a way.
Yeah, if you get some of the diehards that are in this group, they really are pushing this education on that. Like, you need to be a business for transformation, because you're there to make an impact for Jesus. Business as missions, kind of, like I said, some of these problems that Christian organizations are causing by faking or providing for people to stay there with the handouts, doesn't have the impact you want it to have. And I'm not saying all of them are having a bad impact, but enough of them are where it's causing problems in countries.
So the people who started and kind of get access, I guess, to the business as transformation, they were actually business owners, unlike kind of
No, a lot of them,
business mission.
what I've seen is a lot of them have started off as business as missions and saw the problem. This group is not trying to bring anybody from their sending organization. But first of all, this is just a bunch of people like myself getting together saying, how can we help? we're just using a different term, but we're not pulling them away from navigators or Assemblies of God or anything. Like they still have a lot of them still have their sending organization that's providing for their monthly income. For example, the gentleman in Turkey with a architecture BIM company now, as we were talking to him, he still has support raisers that are paying a salary because as he was trying to build the business, they were putting all the money into the people and developing the business. Well, when we were talking to John, we said, John, are you pulling a salary now? Because you've gone from 2 years ago when he was actually 4 years ago now. Because I heard about him when I went to Cyprus. When he was wherever it was before Cyprus, so 2020, when he did that one, he went there asking for a $120,000 loan to start a business. And they said, okay, John, you've done incredible. You went from a one-man person 4 years ago to 55 people. You're the largest architectural employer in whatever city is in Turkey. Like, that's incredible. They're like, how close are you to pulling a salary now so that you don't have to rely on senders? And he said, that's actually the transition we're making this year is I am starting to pull a salary now so I don't have to keep getting fundraising to be here.
Mm.
You know. Yeah.
So that was kind of, I guess where I was going with the question is, it seems like that the people who are getting involved with the business as transformation were business owners actually had successful businesses, so they understood what was necessary for it to be transformed.
Well,
right? As opposed
let me go back to Josh, who I mentioned. As a woman, he went over as a business as mission, and unfortunately, he was at I don't know what organization he went with, but he was constantly being pushed and steered by them. You know, first it was 2 years in language school, then it was 2 years trying to do business, then it was maybe you need to go back to labor school. And it was like after this for 8 years back and forth, he's like, I can't take it anymore. And so he turned to this group and said, I want to build a business and have control over what I need to do. Some of these groups still have great relationships with their sending organization. They're just working with this group to make them better. Mm-hmm. So this group is not trying to pull anybody away. This group is basically, we're just a bunch of business men and women that want to help you guys all grow, you know?
You think this idea that it's global is scalable down to a local area or to a city?
It's a good question.
State?
Yep, that's a good question. So 2 years ago when we went, they said, just join our group. And we said, I told them, I said, look, these are my people. I'm going to stay involved. But we still have to take it back local. You know, what God called us to do, we came here to learn from you guys, but what God called us to do was to do it here. You know, like it doesn't matter what we're doing over here. He told us to do it back home, you know, so like what James and I are trying to get wrapped around and get going off the ground. Third Wave Missions was created to do that with local, like people from here, like not Mount Hope, but just people from Lansing in general. We don't want that group to be locked to one church. It's Jesus for a city, you know.
Where is that ministry at? Third Wave? Because, you know,
it's just
Jeff is gone. Elliot, I don't.
Yeah, so the board now is I'm the president of it. James joined the board recently. Guy's still on it, so it's James, Guy, and Gloria Richardson, and my wife and I. And we're getting our legs back under us because of obviously you know history of what happened. There was a break that was needed for a season for healing. You know, let people step away and heal. And so we stopped what we were doing for the sake of people, and now we're trying to get a circle because like my heart's never changed that. We have a responsibility to, I mean, you hear like in Spin, like, I don't know if you guys were in church, those of you that are Mount Hope people, but 2 Sundays ago when they had them all talk about their future, what they want to do. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
They talked about like building brands. They talked about doing things for Jesus. That's this generation. They're not, if you, like Peter Reeves, he was sharing this with me before he left, that he was at a conference and they did the traditional, how many people feel called to missions? Like 10 hands went up out of like 500 people. And the Holy Spirit was like, put on his heart. Ask him how many people feel called to be entrepreneurs. He asked that, 400 hands went up. Like this generation is, they want to make a difference. And it's interesting, like you see like with the adoption of like, you know, all the food delivery services and Uber and all that, this generation is looking for gigs. They're not looking for full-time jobs. They don't want 40-hour, you know, a week jobs. They want to balance their freedom and get money as they need it. It's going to be a different shift in about 5 years when we see like this becomes the mainstream norm. What's that?
I said probably more like 3. What's happening, and I work for retail. I've been working for a big construction company developers, and they're letting people go left and right, and it's impossible to make a wage working for someone else. And not only that, I'm like the generation between, but the kids under me saw their entire school shut down, their grocery store shut down. What was still open? Did anyone guess? It wasn't the garden center. You couldn't buy seeds. You couldn't go buy food because it was all gone. But you could buy liquor. You could buy lotto tickets, and in some states you could still go to the strip club. So these kids are living in a world where they realize they have to make their own path. And I'm just praying real hard for our youth. Right now in Lansing, we've got just a couple of prominent figures working directly with youth, like Miles, who just ran for commissioner. He is a teacher at Sexton, and he's building entrepreneurship programs for these kids. Because they're still going to want to buy products. They're still going to want to have sneakers that aren't creased at the toe.
Oh my gosh! Have you watched the pain of that? Like,
so
for you older people, me included, these kids walk with everything they can do to not crease their shoes. And they walk the most ridiculous walks I've seen in my life to try to keep from creasing the front of their shoes.
And that's like you said, it's because of the artificial connections that they have. If they're photo ready, they're not looking at God. They're not picturing God. They're photo ready for those moments where their friends can say, wow, look at this person, they're doing so good. But they're not real connections. So it's going to be really important to bridge that gap between being an independent entrepreneur and also building a community. Like you said, that what was her name? The woman who Wildcats.
Yeah, Melissa.
Is building those online communities and real life interactions, and it's going to require us older people to be able to step away from showing them, well, this is how we did it. We walked to school for 20 miles uphill and ran. You know, like they're in a different world, so we have to be able to relate to them in order for the marketplace to lead them somewhere where they have opportunity.
I mean, you can already see it. Like, we always hear about the labor shortages right now. It's because this generation doesn't want to do business the way we do business. I mean, we're here. I mean, we need to adapt and be ready for it. I mean, I even studied. I'm like, I've done this gig stuff more through Upwork in many years past, but that might have to be another way we do to supplement labor. We might have to adapt and find people that are willing to do one gig at a time, you know.
Collaboration's going to be really important too, and I don't know if they understand that.
Yeah.
You're talking about bringing the global thing to the local, like the so you have business owners, you have people that are entrepreneurs that want to launch stuff, you have investors and mentors that can come in, and so this is all coming together already. Is it something that's already?
It's already happening, but we want to actually be a little more purposeful about it.
Yeah.
To, like, for example, like, and this is a, first of all, hear my heart on this. I never want to step on, like, I love this church. I want to serve under this church. I'd love to do it in partnership with the church, you know, because there's tremendous blessing when you do it under authority. You know, to work with our youth and have a strategy of, like, how can we help you guys grow to be influencers? I mean, it doesn't even have to be about a job anymore. It's about influencing now too. Like, these people, like, actually, and it's great. I saw it in Spin when I came back last Wednesday. They're actually getting ready to launch what they're calling influencers. And they're going to do it seasonal. So if a student is playing, you know, football in the fall and they don't have the time to put into it, they can do it in the winter season if they're not playing sport. And they're going to train these students how to be influencers in their school, online. And I'm like, you know, you just got to embrace it and roll with things, you know?
Lansing just did that. I don't know if it was the 517 group or if it was about PLI people, but they just launched a group of social Lansing influencers.
Yeah, I saw that. You had to apply for it to, like, be trained up to be that? Yeah. Yep.
But how can we as a church make sure that the voice of Jesus is also heard? I think it's going to be a lot.
Yeah, and that's the thing where I kind of like what Melissa's doing with Wildcats is getting the real life part, because if it's just online, it's a channel you can tune out. But if you can build relationships into it, that's where you have an impact. I mean, and what was incredible and why we stood behind that group out of all the other groups was all the other groups were hoping to make an impact. She had, in a short window of time, already had a proven track record of 20% conversion to Jesus. And it was like in such a short window. Like, it was eye-opening, you know? But,
Well, it shows there's a need there that no one's really aware of, or if they are, they don't know how to meet it or how to
Fill the void. Those are the kind of God ideas that get you in front of people.
Yeah.
Like I'm not part of this church. I've been here every now and then, but I go to Trinity.
Mhm.
And it's that time. It's like, yeah, so for something like that to be under like under one church,
Yeah.
I think it does need to be.
That's where we're strategizing
global
here.
as far as in
Yeah.
the local church being like
Yeah.
a
Like when I
the church, the big C
Geographical,
church, not the little
yeah,
one.
geographical more maybe than
Yeah,
church.
geographical.
like when I was talking to
For the
Melissa.
city and other cities, then it could be something that could be in every
Yeah.
city.
Like when I was talking to Melissa, like their strategies that cost about 10 grand, and this is based on Southeast Asia, financial situations. But I was like, Melissa, I was like, I would write a check tomorrow for 10 grand if you could drop that in Lansing, Michigan. It would be well worth 10 grand to me. To have that kind of impact on our young generation. To get a team of, and this is where, like I told her, I was like, you already have it boxed. I'm like, it's already packaged nice and neat. Like you could literally franchise this, give it to Trinity, Mount Hope, and whatever churches want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be about the church. It's about the people. The people will go where the relationships take them.
The relationships are interspersed among
Yeah,
churches
exactly.
anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. It's more about the impact, Like with her, she's not trying to partner with the church. She's like, in fact, I don't want this to be a church thing.
Right.
She's like, it's never intended to be a church thing. It's intended to be a community thing.
Cool.
You said Melissa's organization is called Wildcat.
Yeah, it's
Is that how we connect and support?
if you come up to me afterwards, I got access to all her presentation material on my iPad. I can show you what I know about her. But again, they always kept it limited to Southeast Asia because wherever they're at, there's enough military police presence that run raids, So, like some of the prayer requests on my phone. Anybody ever heard of WhatsApp? That's the worldwide app.
That's what they do. Any foreign.
It's WhatsApp. Yeah. So I was reading messages yesterday about they raided one of their. What was it? They raided. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, let's see here. Two different ones here. There's one group for the investors with her and one group with direct to. There we go. Here's one. Her apartment building was raided, and they made records of all the documents of people there, and she has a U.S. passport. The one girl that I don't even know if
What
she's
country was this in?
I don't know the country. That's the thing. Like she's kind of kept it off the radar on purpose, And that happens. Like some of the presentations that we saw, we had to be careful. We couldn't say where they're from because they're in very sensitive parts of the world. But yeah, here's another cool story too. Cool blessing. So those that know my wife and I, our oldest two kids aren't really there with their faith. And we've had several conversations where we're like, you're just trying to make us Christians. I'm like, no, we're trying to teach you the value of a relationship with Jesus. You can never, I can't make you my friend. That's a choice we have to make together, That's the same thing with Jesus. I can't make you his friend. It's a choice you and him have to make together. I said, but I can teach you how to know what it looks like, And so our oldest two kids are kind of in that phase right now where they're just not there. And so I met this company out of Nepal. They have a filmmaking company. It's called The Story Company. If you look them up, you can find their website.
I thought they were pretty cool.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I was messing with them because their presentation was first class. And like I said, I get to eat lunch and dinner with all these people, so I was up there. I walked over to them after the presentation. I said, you guys are disqualified. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, you guys use unfair technology that nobody else had access to. And they're like, what? I said, you cheated. I mean, they're a motion production company. They make movies. So their presentation was lights out. And anyway, so this is how God does cool stuff when you obey. So, our oldest daughter's in Orlando learning to be a cinematographer right now. She's about halfway through her degree. A bachelor's degree in 20 months is insane. That's the program. 20 months and she'll have her bachelor's degree. And she's over 10 months through. And so I heard Jordan talk about they're lacking a cinematographer. And I was like, oh my gosh, my daughter's studying that. And so I called her. I said, hey, crazy idea. This guy is in Nepal, and you have the ability to stop your classes at any moment and pick up where you left off. Or you can switch to online versus in person. I said, what do you think about going to Nepal for 2 months, working with this company? They have a need for a cinematographer. I said, they know you're a student. They're more than ecstatic. I already ran it by Jordan. He was like, give her a call, But so I called Bella. She's like, awesome. She's like, I've always wanted to live in Italy.
Nepal.
Yeah. I said,
Well,
no,
whoops.
this is not Naples. I said, Nepal is between India and China, base of the Himalayan mountains. She's like, oh, that's cool. I love it. But this is like totally a God thing because my wife and I have been praying, constantly praying for her. And I was like, Bella, this will change your life forever. I said, to go to a Kathmandu, spend 2 months around those people. I mean, I spent 3 days in India and it was life-changing, to spend 2 months there. I said, first of all, you'll get complete credits on IMDb. You'll get credit not working under somebody, but doing the cinematography, She's like, I know. I said, she's like, that's just an incredible opportunity. So she's on the fence right now. How do I make it happen? I said, look, I asked her, I said, would you regret not doing this? She said, yeah. I said, don't regret it. Yeah. So she's in that thing of, okay, I just don't know how. I said, we'll figure that out, But just a blessing from God of being there, being obedient where we go. He knows our family, what they need, even though we're serving them where he asks us to go,
How are others that maybe aren't business owners taking advantage of kind of the business's transformation?
So that was a good question that got brought up this last conference because they said, of this conference, you got 10 companies here. 10 companies are presenting, but you also have many other companies that were there because they love the group. But a lot of these, like I said, groups, like the group from Tulunis, they brought like 8 people. The other 6 aren't business owners. Some of them are just, they're content with, they just want to be a part of the vision. Others are in apprentice mode to learn so that they can be sent.
Is there a minimum investment amount so that like a small investor can get involved?
What they did, and I asked that question, so I said, how do you set the mark? And they said we had to put a mark here so we didn't get any randos here. And so we had to make the entry point high enough that people took it serious to be here.
Right.
So the entry point was, if you were in person, $12,500 to invest. If you were online, because there was about 30 people online that we didn't get to see them. Like all the things were live presentations, but you just didn't quite see those guys because their faces weren't on the screen. I knew some of them from the previous time, but they were required to put $10,000 to come to the table for that. Yeah. So it's really just a filter.
So a small guy that wants to invest $500 to help, like a contribution, is not really for them.
It's because of the sensitivity of the group that they're trying to make sure.
Yeah.
Because like I said, the one group we chose to invest in, I don't even know what country's in. I probably do because she sent bank documents out. I can look at where the bank is, But yeah. Yeah, there were some of them that they couldn't record too because they said we can't record because names and locations are being disclosed, Yeah, questions? Again, I love it. I love this group. I love that group I'm part of. It's my heart. My wife and I, our heart is businesses and missions. For us, it's not separated anymore. It's life,
I have a couple kind of technical questions. Unidad, you mentioned that as your company in India, right? So is Unidad the 3D company in India for commercial?
Yeah.
content?
So when they wanted to join our team, and thankfully for great mentors and coaches, and they said make it separate and make it a separate entity. Anybody guess why we chose to do that?
To make it separate from collaborative.
Yeah, keep it separate.
You don't have to separate it later.
So it wasn't American owned?
It was more of a liability of we saw the game that was played with we were watching. Some of these businesses are cutthroat. Like they're suing people that leave their companies, and whether it's a rightful lawsuit or not, like they were suing some of these people that we knew that jumped from one company to the next for the equivalent of $50,000 US. That person will never see $50,000 US in their life in India, And
I see. So if they see the big money pockets, they'll sue.
The last thing we wanted to do was be sued on their home court.
There you go.
So we made sure it was separate.
Perfect.
So this company Unidad, so you've been using people in India since you started your company.
Oh, yeah.
Is that the same group of people, or are you using other people for your
The
day-to-day
two
stuff,
people
or
that joined our team were with the two that joined, the two that are running it over there were met through one of the longest standing people we used. Neither one was there when we started using them, but they became like cornerstones.
But you still have other people that
No, we
you're
actually,
using this company.
and here's the cool thing about God and his direction. He was giving us warning about, like, in telling us to start our own business, there was the blessing of that, but there was also the protection of collaborative that we didn't see behind it. And these companies are realizing, like, for those that don't know, Apple's moving to India. They're abandoning China. They're done with China. They're moving all their manufacturing plants to India. In that process, a lot of labor laws are changing because Apple's been negotiating directly with India to change India's business structure. Like, it doesn't work for us, but guess what? They're playing ball because
It's Apple.
it's Apple. And so all the games that are being played, India knows they're hiding. They're probably the highest demand country that people rely on for outsourcing. And so
Yeah, just call customer service for almost any company these days.
Yep. And so we saw games starting to get played, and we were in the middle of it because we always had like 4 different consultants that we'd use to make sure that we were keeping them all honest. One of the biggest problems with India is overpromising and underperforming. We saw it time and time again. And we didn't know until we had our own team how much lying was going on behind the scenes. Once we had Upal and Shantanu, Upal said, CampusCon was saying they had 25 people. He said it was really less than 10. He's like, Unidad is now twice as big as the company that we were relying on heavily as a consultant. One of the other companies called ASC that some of the guys went to, they told us they had 50. He's like, they had like 12. I don't know who they were counting. Maybe they were counting like
Every past member. It's like a Southern Baptist church role.
So we
get on,
thought,
but you can never get off.
we thought we were partnering with companies that were more than competent to support what we needed, and we were being lied to the whole time. Now, in one of the things too is now we controlled our own team and our own future. And here's the other thing too. Even though we blessed them financially, and everybody that joined this team got a significant pay raise. We let Upal and Shantanu determine that, but they made sure they took care of them. Everybody that joined, we were going to be on pace. We doubled our volume since Christmas to the first half of this year. We doubled our volume, which caused tremendous stress. Which never, I hear controlled growth is 20%. We did 100 in 6 months. It was stupid. Thank God for the blessing, but it brought a lot of heartache.
Be careful what you ask for.
I didn't ask for us to double. It just happened. So based on that scale, we were spending about $25,000 a month with outsourcing. We would have gone to 50 easily. And it was going to go up because everybody was jumping the race because they were going. When we started, it was $12 an hour, man hour that we were billing. They were billing us. They were trying to jump to 30 in like 2 years' time. Just insane. But they were getting it. People were willing to pay it. And we were like, oh my gosh, that's going to blow up our whole business model. And by switching and having our own team, the blessing that happened here was we haven't paid an invoice yet over $22,000, and we doubled our volume. So we actually saved money, blessed these people, and doubled our output. And the two partners I have, they're ridiculously generous. They said, we're billing you guys at 12 an hour. We want to drop it to 7. I was like, how are you going to do that? And they're like, as we open the doors for them to start working with other outside people where they can bill 20 to 30, they're like, we'll lower yours. I mean, I'm the owner too, so I didn't ask them to do this. They proposed it to me. They're like, we want to lower it to 7 or 8 and raise the billing over here. And I'm like, if that's what you guys want to do, I'll trust you. You don't have to do it. I'm fine with where you're at, But I mean, just a blessing in disguise. Like, we got the best team, and it's our own team. And the blessing for them is we're trying to blur the lines so that they don't feel like they're just over there. We said we want to start bringing you into conversations with our U.S. construction team, not the clients that are like on calls, because we know how that's taken this, but to bless them, we want to bring them into meetings because we're having a meeting here talking about how we're going to build this thing, and then we're regurgitating it over here. We said with who you guys want, who Upal and Shantanu trust, we want to bring them into that conversation. Let them be part of it. For one, it shows trust in that we trust you as part of our team. 2, it gives them exposure to the actual construction environment that they're not getting. Because right now in India, the way they build in India is not how we build in the United States. No. So we can't say, go look at the job site around the corner. I watched those job sites. I was like, oh my gosh, that's going to fall down. Everything is bamboo and concrete. Yeah.
No, one other question I had. I thought you had mentioned early on about a nonprofit over there too. Did I hear that or am I mistaken that? So I was going to ask, what is the nonprofit?
Whatever I saw wasn't something that I was involved in. It might have been something that
Oh, okay.
there are groups over there. I mean, we're one of the groups that Mount Hope vested in 2 years ago. This is a cool. I heard this theme over and over again. Pivot. You know, it becomes a key term for a lot of business people is pivoting.
Right.
So one of the groups that Mount Hope actually invested in 2 years ago, she was building a cafe called Firefly, and she works with human trafficked women in Calcutta. And unfortunately, because of flights, Kelly and Jenna and I weren't able to connect to see what she was doing in Calcutta. Because the day we were leaving, she was coming back. But she wanted to build a cafe, and when she went to Cyprus 2 years ago, she had a business plan for $172,000 loan, which is a lot of money, for a startup. But the group knew her so well and seen what she'd done before that they rallied behind her, especially because she's dealing with human trafficked women. And so I caught up with Kelly and I was like, "Hey, how have things gone since 2 years ago?" She's like, "Well, I had to pivot," and I kept hearing this word over and over from different companies. But what had happened was even better than what she could have planned. Because of how everybody's moved to delivery services for food and stuff, through whatever happened, she decided not to open the cafe, which was going to be a huge price tag because you had to buy land, you had to renovate it, you had to, all that stuff, and then you got to run it, you got to deal with customers. What God provided was an opportunity for her to create, they call it in the cloud bakery, which was already using the training center she was using, and so she didn't need a new facility. She didn't need to deal with customers in her face in a store. Her real ministry is the people that she's training to be bakers that are coming out of human trafficking. And I said, "Kelly, that's awesome because now you have 100% of your time with the people that you need to minister to." She's like, "Absolutely." And she's pivoted from baking products to granola is a big thing that's blowing up in India. So now she's building this whole granola brand that's delivering to all the high-end families in India. And she's spending all of her time ministering to the girls while they're doing the work. I'm like, "That's better than what you had planned." She's like, "I know." And it didn't cost her $172,000 to do it. It cost her not even 50, So it's these are the stories you get to hear of all these girls that are, she was able to, the critical thing about keeping the bakery location where she was it's right on the edge of the red light district in Calcutta where she's at. So she's right there with the people.
Wow. Awesome.
Well, thank you, Art.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
Awesome.
You want to pray us out?
Yeah. Father, thank you for this chance just to encourage, be real, and just share our vision of what you asked us to do with our business, Father. I pray for everybody in this room, Father, that they would draw closer to you, that they would hear your voice and what you want them to do specifically. What's the vision you have for them? Father, and I look forward to, over the next year plus, whatever it is, to hear all the testimonies and things that have happened, Father, as they trusted you. Father, I thank you that you're going to give them wisdom. You're going to give them God ideas that they could have never dreamed of. Father, and I just thank you for all the personal rewards they're going to see in the moments in their life that they would never change because they trusted you with their business, Father. Just thank you for that in Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Art. Only one problem, man. You just need some more to do.